Hi guys, so today's video is going to be kind of a little bit of a chat about the expectations that sometimes I think that Booktube can put on people when it comes to how many books they should be reading in a single month. I've always considered myself a relatively slow reader. I would say I read between 5 and 7 books a month, depending on the size of the books, how much I'm liking them, how much free time I have in that month. It all depends. It varies from month to month. And I think that's true for a lot of other people. How much they read is dependent on a lot of other factors, and mostly having to do with things going on in your personal life. But sometimes when you watch Booktube, it just seems overwhelming, the amount of books that people are able to read. And I think sometimes it creates this feeling of being inferior, or how could I possibly not be able to read as much as that person? That person looks so busy and I thought I was busy, but they seem busier than me. Just things I feel like can kind of get to us. And I see comments about this very thing pretty often. How do you read so much? I can only read 1 book a month. How do people have this much time to read? And I wanted to kind of do the math and let you all know it's pretty unrealistic to expect yourself to read the amount of books that some booktubers are reading. What I went ahead and did was I made a fake TBR, and this TBR is made up of 10 books from a few different genres, and some are really small, some are much bigger. And I picked 10 because I see some people read 10 plus books a month consistently. And even though I get comments saying, how do you read so much? I feel like I don't read anything compared to people who are consistently reading 10, 12, 15, 18 books a month. I'm like, how is that even possible? And I know I have some free time in my life. So I'm like, how are they able to do that? So I made a TBR of 10 books. From what I've seen, this seems pretty standard for Booktube. Maybe you watch Booktubers who read far less than that, but that's the amount I went with. I then tried to pick a collection of different books, like I said, different sizes, different genres, because I think certain books are more dense. And even though the amount of pages, or I should say the amount of word count, because that's what I used here, the word count can be pretty high. Some books are easier to get through than others. Some kind of require more concentration, or maybe the vocabulary is more demanding. Whatever the case may be, obviously it's going to vary from book to book, but I'm doing all the math based off of word count for books and the average amount of words most people read per minute. According to the internet, the average person reads between 200 words per minute and 250 words per minute. So the number that I went ahead and used was 225 words per minute when doing this math. Of these 10 books that I'll mention in a moment, there were a couple of them that when I went to look up the amount of words that those books were made up of, instead of giving me a word count, the internet, it's like it predicted what I was doing. It was like, this is how long it takes the average person to read this book. And that number was based off of 250 words. Obviously, this means for those few books, they're kind of expecting you to read a little bit faster than I am expecting for the rest of the books. But let's go ahead and jump into the TBR that I feel this is kind of an indication of the sorts of books that people are picking up when they have these 10 plus books read in a month type of wrap-ups. Going through the books on this little fake TBR, we have Mistborn at 214,000 words, Red Rising at 121,749, Gardens of the Moon at 209,000, Wuthering Heights at 107,945, Harry Potter at 76,944, Way of Kings 383,181, Of Mice and Men 30,000. And then we have the ones that just gave me the amount. So Six of Crows, the average person apparently, if you're reading 250 words per minute, is getting through that book in 8 hours, 44 minutes. The Nightingale, you're getting through it at 10 hours, 3 minutes. And Stormfront, the first book in the Dresden Files, you would be getting through in 4 hours, 39 minutes. Obviously, something like Harry Potter is going to be much easier to get through. Stormfront is shorter. It approximates at 4 hours plus. And then something like A Mice and Men, 30,000. That's something you could get through quite easily. But then you have some of the monsters on this list, like Way of Kings, that are massive. And I felt when I was writing some of these down, I was like, oh man, am I including too many really big books? But I thought about it and I was like, no, I don't think I am, because when I watch other people on BookTube, I feel like those are the kinds of books I see on their TBRs. I see a combination of these really massive tomes. You have these other books that are almost like novellas. They're shorter or they're middle grade, so they're easier to get through. So like I said before, if you took different books, you're going to get different numbers, but we're going to get into the math here now of how many hours that would be in a single month. If you want to do something like this yourself, just know that if you use the exact same books I used, I rounded a lot of times, because whenever I was taking the word count and then dividing it by how many words per minute a person reads, you're not always getting whole numbers, but a lot of times I would just round, and depending on how you end up rounding, you'll probably get different answers than I did. But with the specific books that I picked, we're looking at 108 hours in 1 month, which comes out to roughly 4.5 days worth of reading in a single month. A few things to know about this. This is if the people who are reading these books are only reading the books in physical form, because I think most of us know a lot of people on BookTube are also listening to audiobooks, and audiobooks get through books much slower than the average person does just reading a physical copy. So this number is completely made up of if you are reading the physical. And on top of that, this is if you're reading at 225 words per minute. But realistically, a lot of us don't just sit down and have peaceful reading time where everything is quiet and we can concentrate on our book. A lot of us don't have that. We read before bed, we get kind of sleepy, you wake up in the morning, you're like, I don't remember those last couple pages I read last night. And then you have to kind of remind yourself of that. Or you've got kids and you're trying to read and then your kid wakes up from their nap, or your phone goes off and it's something really important, maybe it has to do with work. You get the point. A lot of us are not reading completely uninterrupted. The point of me talking about all of this is not trying to throw shade at booktubers who read tons of books, because when I was looking up how many words per minute the average person reads, they did specify that in college, a lot of times that number gets bumped up to 300 words per minute, because college students are expected to read a lot. And if you are reading a lot on average, and it's a hobby that you absolutely adore, chances are you've learned to read faster. Some people who do BookTube, they also maybe have a really long commute. They listen to audiobooks that entire time. Some people have jobs that allow them to listen to audiobooks. Maybe it's not a job that requires, maybe it's something that requires a lot of muscle memory, but not necessarily having to problem solve. So they can listen to audiobooks. And if you're listening to audiobooks for 8 hours a day, 4 hours a day at work or something, yeah, you're going to get through books probably a lot faster than somebody who has to really focus at work. They work 8 hours, they come home, you gotta make food for your kids, you gotta pick your kids up from school, or you're studying for classes and tests and stuff. There's just so many things that I always feel bad about when I see people comparing themselves to individuals on BookTube, because, you know, it sounds really kind of cliche to say that people online, you're only seeing like the highlight reel, you only really see what they put out. But it's true. It might seem like that person's busy and they're just on top of it all, but at the end of the day, some people just have more time to read, and some people are just really fast readers. A lot of people, they skim. If they're not feeling a book, they just skim. They kind of get a gist of what's happened. They look up a synopsis for the rest of the book online, or a chapter-by-chapter summary. Some people are really open about this, and they have no problem being like, yeah, I started it, I got to about here, and then I skimmed. But some people are really nervous to admit that because of the nature of the internet, and they're afraid that if they try to give their opinion about that book, that other people will dismiss their opinion. Just know, if you're, again, comparing yourself, some people are skimming, they're just not telling you. I did a video a little while back, and I had stumbled across this Reddit page where people were discussing their true feelings about non-readers. And something that came up when I was looking through this conversation was that a lot of them felt that when people say, I just don't have the time to read, what they're really saying is, I just don't want to give up my free time for reading, which can be true. Some people don't want to give up their free time. They come home and they had a really hard day at work. Maybe they have a really demanding job and they just want to veg out on the couch. That's totally fine. And I don't have anything against that. But I do think there are some people in the world, and I know from experience, I've gone through this, that just literally don't have the time. When I was in college, I had a scholarship, but it didn't cover every bit of my expenses at school, and I didn't want to graduate with tons of debt. So at one point when I was at college, I was working 5 part-time jobs. I was interning for my degree. I didn't live on campus because I was trying to save money. So I commuted to school, which that's rush hour traffic. I had classes as early as 7:30, so I had to take an hour before class just to get to school, and just there was so much going on. School itself, obviously a full-time student, I had no time. I had no free time. And if somebody had said, you just don't want to give up your free time, I would have been furious. But I think sometimes we have these expectations where we see somebody who's in college. A lot of booktubers are young and they're in school, high school, college. They're definitely busy with that, but they're reading all these books. Or we see people with kids and they're reading all these books, and we just kind of feel bad because we're thinking, how is it that they can balance all of this and I can't? But you never see the full picture. You don't know how fast that person reads. You don't know how much time they have in their day to listen to audiobooks. But I just really wanted to make this so that anybody who's feeling down on themselves for the amount of reading they do and they're comparing themselves, 4.5 days for this, TBR that I set up, 4.5 days in 1 month worth of reading. That's so much. That's a lot. So don't feel bad about yourself if you don't have roughly 4.5 days of reading to put in your schedule. While a lot of this has been me kind of saying, hey, it's okay if you don't have the time to read this much, there are also individuals out there who maybe feel like they do have the free time and they would like to learn how to manage it better, or maybe you're somebody who is looking to learn how to read faster. And there are a lot of resources that you can look into to figure out how to do this. There's also one of these resources would be Skillshare, who is sponsoring this video. And I know a lot of you have probably heard about Skillshare, you know the gist of it, but I actually did take one of their classes. Specifically, I took a class on time management and I did a whole review of it in a vlog. I'll have it linked down below. And I actually did think there were a lot of good little bits of information within this class. I thought the presentation was really nice, but if you are somebody who's wanting to look into this, they have those resources available to you. You can try to learn how to read faster. You can try to get through that never-ending TBR. We're always talking about how there's always so many books and not enough time. For any of you who are unfamiliar with Skillshare, they are an online learning community that offers so many classes on so many different things. I personally am not somebody who's looking to learn to read faster. I'm always looking to manage my time better, but those aren't the only things they offer. They have classes in photography, baking, art. That is probably what I'm going to look into next, is learning how to get better at art. But they have so many things. And you know what? Maybe you've learned through this video that you're like, I don't want to spend 4.5 days worth of reading in a month. I have other hobbies I'm interested in. You can learn how to improve on those hobbies using Skillshare as well. An annual subscription is $10 per month, or I will have a link down below where you can try it out for free. But I'll have all the details for that, including the class that I took and the video where I do a review, in the description bar down below. But at the end of the day, I hope that a lot of you maybe feel a little bit better after hearing these numbers, and don't feel bad when you hear somebody talking about how much they're reading and they seem just so busy, so how could I possibly not read as much as them? I have no problem admitting that I have a lot of free time in my life now. I didn't used to, but I have so much more free time now. And so even though I don't read as many books as a lot of other people, and I actually think I probably have more free time than some of the other booktubers that I watch, I just have a lot of interests. I love to write. I love to play music. I love to compose music. I love so many things. I love so many things. And for me, reading is just never going to be the only thing that I love. And if you're like that too, then, don't sweat it if you're not reading 10, 15 books a month. I would love to see if you how you feel about all of this. Do you consider yourself a slow reader, a fast reader? Are you really busy? Do you have tons of free time that you could be reading more books within? But anyway, thanks so much for watching. Don't forget to check out Skillshare if you would like to try out the 2 months free, and I'll see you guys later. Bye.